Hi, everybody. So we're here to look at homeostasis and feedback today. And so we've kind of talked about this off and on throughout the unit or throughout the year, really. But this is the first time we've really done an official focused lesson on it. So the idea here is that the body has to be able to monitor and maintain the internal conditions. So we keep your body in a certain temperature range. The blood pH has to be within a specific range, all of these kind of things. And so these are what we call set points. So they're the values for different conditions that we're trying to maintain. Okay. And within this idea of a set point, there is a range that it kind of fluctuates within, but it's a very specific range. And if it moves outside of that range, then problems occur. So for example, your body temperature. Officially, the average human body temperature is 98.6. And if you think about it, even, they won't send you home from school with a fever unless your temperature is at least 100. So we're talking about those temperature ranges that they consider, this is still kind of normal versus this is you're sick, there's a problem, right? So when we talk about homeostasis, it's all about being in that stable internal conditions. It's all about equilibrium or balance. So we know that organisms detect and respond to stimulus. And so whenever you're thinking about this idea of homeostasis, you always want to think about the idea of balance. And the way that this balance or this homeostasis is typically maintained is through what we call feedback loops. We will sense that something's slightly off and we will make an adjustment so that we can bring it back into that normal range. So we have two key types of feedback loops: negative feedback loops and positive feedback loops. So here's a few terms that you should know about in relation to this concept. The first is stimulus, and that's the variable that causes a response. For example, I'm feeling thirsty, so I'm going to drink some of my Dr. Pepper. The stimulus would be the I'm feeling thirsty. The receptor sensor situation, we have sense organs that are going to detect that stimulus. So we have detected that maybe my mouth's dry, and it's sent to the brain. And the brain says, okay, drink some Dr. Pepper. So then we have our effector, muscle gland, whatever it is. So I'm going to have muscles that are going to reach over, pick up the Dr. Pepper and drink it. And then the response would be the changes, decreases or increases, the effect of the stimulus. So my mouth's no longer dry, so I no longer have that stimulus saying, hey, I'm thirsty. So we have negative feedback. This is the most common feedback mechanism. It's the one that almost all of the systems are designed to set up. And the idea with negative feedback is it's going to reduce the effect of the stimulus. So if the stimulus says my blood sugar's too high, it's going to make it go lower. If my stimulus says that my potassium levels are too low, it's going to make it go higher. So when we're talking about negative feedback, what we're really talking about is kind of reversing the stimulus. Things like sweat, blood sugar, breathing rate, they're all controlled through this negative feedback concept. Okay, so we have Patrick. And our stimulus is heat, so we're kind of warm. The receptor would be the temperature receptors in the skin. The effector is the sweat glands. We sweat to try and cool it down. The response would be sweat. And that leads to sweaty Patrick. If it's cold, the temperature receptors on the skin will then get to the muscles, which cause shivering, which then we have shivering Patrick. So the idea is that if we were cold, we want to warm up. If we were hot, we want to cool down. The other type of feedback is positive feedback. This one increases the effect of the stimulus. The idea behind positive feedback is if a little bit's good, more is even better. And so it really is about increasing, increasing, increasing. Child labor, blood clotting, fruit ripening, all of these things are examples of positive feedback. Okay, so childbirth probably is the most commonly used example for positive feedback. So the stimulus, the baby gets to a point where they're pushing against the cervix. Those nerve cells in the cervix send a signal to the brain, and this leads the pituitary gland to release a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin stimulates contractions of the uterus, which then, of course, pushes on the baby, causing the baby to push even more on the cervix, sending signals to the brain, which releases more oxytocin, which increases the contractions, which causes more push until ultimately the baby and placenta are delivered. And then, because there is no push on the cervix, it will stop. So when we're talking about imbalances, that's where diseases or issues often arise. So there may be reasons why the body can't regulate homeostasis. Could be genetic disorders, drug and alcohol abuse can lead to problems. Certain intolerable conditions, extreme heat, extreme cold, beyond what the body can cope with. Diseases are also one of the key things when we talk about not being able to maintain homeostasis. I know in my anatomy classes, I often refer to these things as homeostatic imbalances, because instead of just calling them diseases, the point I want them to understand is that that disorder or disease, that problem, is due to the body not being able to maintain that normal balance level. So cancer, we can't regulate cell growth. Diabetes, we can't actually regulate the blood glucose levels properly because for whatever reason, we do not have proper functioning of the system that moves the sugar out of the blood. So how does this connect to the cell signaling concept that we've focused on? So in order to maintain homeostasis, the cells in a multicellular organism have to be able to communicate. The idea here is that to be able to keep this balance level, to keep our temperature regulated, or to keep our blood sugar levels regulated, it's not just a single cell that's responsible for this. We have multiple cells and multiple parts of the body. So they have to be able to communicate with each other to make these things happen. So we use signal transduction pathways to help maintain homeostasis. No, I'm not requiring you to do the research and report thing. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. And I will see you for the next lesson. Bye.